James, thanks so much for joining me, dude. I was gonna do a little setup. I just thought when I first met you, it was really funny because I still didn't get your actual name, but we were at a get together, and this guy was like, "I've got some like blackberry,
Yeah.
what was it, like wine or something?"
Yeah, blackberry wine.
And then goat milk and cheese. I think you had cheese that I didn't get to try, but
Yep,
you
that's
probably
true.
had it.
You got some.
And it's just one of the coolest ways to like greet somebody.
Yeah.
That's very generous of you. And we started talking about farm life and stuff, which we'll get into. But yeah, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
No problem, man. My pleasure. Good to be in Portland for a brief period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to get into this. We'll kind of unfold your story. But James basically was a business owner in Portland and now runs a farm. Stop me if I'm wrong on any of this. In rural Oregon.
Yes.
And I just find it to be really fascinating and a cool story. And I think there's a lot of people my age who want to have that life. So that's one of the reasons I want to have you on, kind of explore
I hope so.
that. Yeah.
I'm looking for one.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah.
How old are you, man?
I'm 36.
Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely younger than me, but not that much younger than me.
Okay. Yeah. And we were just talking before we started rolling too. We both moved to the Northwest or Portland in the same year, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've both been here almost like 20 years. But anyway, yeah. So kind of tell me about what it was like when you ran your business and if you enjoyed it or if you didn't enjoy it, and kind of like just give me like a day in the life of when you were doing that.
Coffee or farm?
Coffee.
Coffee.
So, yeah, let's go back
Coffee.
to the beginning.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, by and large, I loved it. I mean, I didn't even start drinking coffee until I was like, I guess it was maybe 33 years old.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I thought it smelled bad. I didn't think it tasted good. I mean, I grew up in Texas, and so, I mean, it was basically like instant coffee and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it just wasn't a part of my life. But I was working downtown in Portland, and there was a coffee shop, and a little like he roasted his own coffee, and it was right across the wall from my office. And I stopped in there one day when I had a bunch of work to get done, because I just wanted like some energy, basically. And I got an Americano from him, and it tasted really good. I was like, oh man, wow! Like I taste like notes of chocolate and some fruit notes. Like I get it now. This is why people drink coffee. And so I got to be friends with that guy, and we talked about opening up a coffee shop together at some point. And then, I mean, this is probably for another time, but like I was having like the best year of my career and the best week of my career. And that Friday, I got fired. And there was no explanation. No, I mean, it was just completely like, oh, we've decided to let you go. And so I was like, all right, well, great. I thought about it for a second. I mean, other things happened, but I went back to that coffee shop and was like, hey, let's open up a coffee shop. I've got, money saved because, I mean, I used to like to travel, and I had like I just had gotten out of a long-term relationship. And so, my expenses had gone way down. And so I was able to save some money, and I had money saved that I was hoping to do something with at some point, but I didn't know what. And so I was like, hey, let's open up a coffee shop. And looking back on it, I completely understand why this guy said what he did. But he was like, oh, well, I'm really busy. I'll happily like consult you for like $50 an hour. But I don't know if I can handle opening up another coffee shop. In reality, I mean, most coffee shops make very little money or they lose money. And so he didn't want to get on that ride again, I'm assuming, unless somebody else was fully funding it. So I just started studying everything about coffee roasting. I mean, I'd lived in South America. I was a foreign exchange student. And so I spoke Spanish fluently at that point, still do. And so it was kind of a natural, like I could learn about it. I could go visit the origin countries. I could figure out what I liked. And then from a business standpoint, I could figure out how I could make at least some money doing it.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did.
That's cool though. That's so interesting that you didn't start drinking coffee until I've been drinking coffee since I was like a teenager.
Well, it probably tasted better up here, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, that's got to be true.
Yeah.
I would think. Yeah.
It's way more of a coffee culture. I think part of it has to do with the fact that, like, I mean, here it's like cold and rainy for 7 or 8 months out of the year. There, I mean, you get lucky some years, but it's like unbearably hot for like 7 or 8 months out of the year. And so, I mean, coffee was more of just like something you would drink early in the morning when you woke up, and that was it. So
at this point, you had approached the guy, and the guy kind of turned you down, and you were like, "I'm going to do this on my own." Kind of thing. Okay.
It actually kind of like kindled a fire under me because I was somewhat insulted.
Yeah.
Because like I had been patronizing this guy's business and became friends with him, over a period of a couple years, and it was so kind of dismissive. I mean, he's kind of like I imagine he's kind of like an anxiety-prone, frantic guy, and so I don't. At this point, I mean, looking back on it, I mean, I completely understand why he said what he said. But back then, I was younger, I was more hot-headed, and so I became determined to do it on my own.
I could see that. Like, this guy's like, oh, this random customer's coming in, like, just befriending me, and then like, wants to open a business.
Yeah, this guy thinks he's hot shit. He's not. Yeah. This guy, I'm not giving him this guy a penny or an hour of my time without getting paid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you kind of forged ahead, and you were like, I'm gonna do this, and did you conceive all of like the branding and stuff yourself? Did you just do all that, or?
Yeah, I mean, more or less. I mean, I'm not like an artist. Yeah. I'm not an artist at all. So I had ideas for what I wanted the logo to be. It was basically a blend of two things. It was like the Converse logo, and I mean, this is kind of cringe at this point for me to say because I don't like the magazine at all. But The Economist. Okay. This guy's kind of like a semi-iconic, just simple red and white logo, and so it was kind of a blend between those two things. Something. I mean, I did draw it. Like I still have the originals somewhere around here, but I definitely did not convert it to I forget those files. I had a semi-pro do all that stuff for me.
Yeah.
So,
but it was more. I mean, I only know you a little bit, but I'm getting the sense that it was more about like being a coffee aficionado. I don't even know if that's the right word, or just it was about high-end coffee more than the brand and.
I think it was just about flavor.
Okay.
I mean. Back then, and I'm sure now, although I think it's gotten a little bit better. Like, the coffee industry in Portland is enormously pretentious. Like, it reminds me of that delightful children's fable, The Emperor Has No Clothes.
Yeah.
Because it's like, dude, it's coffee. Like, I get that you might, and even the same coffee roasted like on a different day that you try, it's going to taste slightly different because it's degassing and it's growing older. It's, things are changing within the beans themselves. Depends on the weather, the temperature, the climate, the moisture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I just wanted to produce coffee that I like to drink, primarily as espresso.
Okay.
Because I don't know if you guys have ever been into any of these like coffee people rituals, but they go through this like elaborate ceremony for tasting coffee where they do what's called a cupping, and they take.
Sounds dirty, but
it does. It does, and it would be cooler if it was slightly dirty.
Okay.
It is anything. It's the most sterile.
Yeah. It's a sampling.
Yeah,
process,
man. I
right?
mean, you take some coffee grounds, you put them in a cup, you pour hot water over the grounds, you let it sit for a determined amount of time, and then you take a special spoon, and then you take just from the top, and you sip the coffee, and then you pontificate on all the magical flavors.
It's like wine tasting almost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Although, at least with wine, like you could make the excuse that you're getting intoxicated. It's like Dionysian, like you're throwing inhibition to the wind. Coffee, you're getting more amped up.
Yeah,
you're getting more
caffeine.
Yeah, you're getting more serious. Like to then expound on all these like obscure flavors, man. Like it wasn't for me.
Interesting.
It wasn't for me. So I wanted to make coffee that I liked primarily as espresso, because if it tastes good as espresso, that's like a concentrated dose of the coffee. I mean, it's going to taste good as anything else. And so all these people were all about these cuppings. I thought, man, it's just a waste of time. It's just a ceremony, you know? It's like a ritual. Yeah. It's like what's that place called where all the rich and famous people go? That grove?
Bohemian Grove.
It's like a Bohemian Grove.
We were just talking about that 2 days ago, yeah. We did a conspiracy episode. Which,
Oh,
but anyway,
sweet.
yeah.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. We'll see. It was kind of a mess, but
Have you guys been to Bohemian Grove?
oh no, not yet.
All right. Keep your fingers crossed.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I would imagine I don't know, opening a coffee shop here is almost like you have to pick the level of pretentiousness because
Yes.
there's Kova and places like that where
Absolutely.
you go in and there's like beakers everywhere.
Absolutely.
But yeah,
There's like that dude like Jorg Vanderflugen who like was like a Finnish snowboarder who opened up like a Hart and has pictures of himself snowboarding all
okay.
over the place.
Yeah, no
And-
hearts. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, their coffee's good, or at least I haven't had it in years. But the last time I had it, it was good. So no offense to the actual flavor of their coffee, but the level of pretension of those places is
Off the
like you
charts.
cut it with a spoon.
So you did that for how long? Once you started?
10 years,
10 years. Okay.
almost 10 years.
I didn't know it was
8
that
years.
long. Honestly. Wow.
Yeah, man, and by and large, it was wonderful. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I did 80 to 90% of the roasting myself. I mean, I took care of all the books, did all the unglamorous, and I mean, I didn't do all the glamorous things, but a lot of glamorous things too.
Okay. Wow. Because I was trying to remember. Is it 10 years or 5 years? Like most small businesses don't make it to.
I mean, they're
But you made it.
Yeah, well, I still failed. I still failed eventually, but well,
that's
I mean,
a decade. That's a long
yeah.
time. You know.
I mean, honestly, I guess you could consider having a business like a retail food service related business for 10 years in Portland as a success because
Yeah.
most don't make it anywhere. I mean, most places in the country don't make it 10 years.
Yeah.
I guess I just look at like, I didn't become like a multimillionaire and there's not like 100 of local
Yeah.
stores across the country.
Franchise and all that. Yeah.
I mean, that was even talked about at points, but the way the economy continued to kind of slope downward, particularly in Portland,
Yeah.
it never happened.
Okay. So tell me about. Was it purely financial? Because I'm guessing there's other problems. Just being a business owner in this city drove
man.
you to stop doing that. But,
Oh man, it started to feel like being bullied. I mean, really, like every couple months, it felt like every month, but it was probably every few months. Like a new government person would just pop up at the store and be like, "Oh, here's a new fee that you owe us, and here's something you can't do." You know, like
Yeah.
it was just like, "Oh, I see you're doing that. You can't do that. You have to pay someone else to do that." And here's a list of people that we've approved for you to pay to do that. And as you can imagine, if you're one of the 10 people that the government has approved to do something for all the businesses in Portland, you have some pricing power.
Yeah, that's some leverage. Yeah.
And you probably have a pretty good relationship with whoever's making that list. And so, I mean, there was at one point, I don't know if you guys remember this, but in like, I want to say maybe 2015 or 2016 when Steve Novick.
I remember Steve. Yeah.
Oh, that guy. I don't know who else. I mean, I think Amanda Fritz was also. I actually sent her an email, tried to explain to her like the economics of small business ownership. They wanted to pass like what was it? I don't know if they called it like the street fee. I think they might have called it the street fee.
Street fee.
And they basically wanted to charge businesses, like retail businesses, based on the amount of traffic they thought they generated in the neighborhood. And so, for example, if you were a brewery, they thought, oh, well, maybe like 600 more people are coming into the neighborhood to go to your brewery every month than would normally be in the neighborhood. And so you're causing 600 more people's worth of damage and
Just use
use
yeah.
of the streets and stuff. And so we're going to charge you like 50 cents a person per month.
Wow.
And so, it'd be like $300. And so you went overnight from like having all these other taxes, but then they were going to tack on $300 a month on top of all that. And then, I mean, that actually didn't go forward. It was kind of a big hullabaloo back then.
Yeah.
Enough
Kind of
people spoke
vaguely
up.
remember it. I think.
Yeah. I mean, it pretty much ended Steve Novick's like local political career.
Okay. He was pushing hard for it.
It was his idea.
Thing. Okay.
And so, I mean, they passed a bunch of other things. It wasn't like that stopped the tide, but it just was like an inflection point, I think, in that process. For me, particularly.
Yeah. It's just so strange because I don't know. I've never run a business here, but I've worked for a lot of small business owners, and it's got to feel like that. Like every time you make headway or if you're doing well, then they sort of come at you and
For
just
sure.
all right, now we got some new fees and some new
Absolutely.
permits and whatever. And interesting.
Are there a lot of people enjoying coffee out front and sitting out front and talking and laughing? Well, make note of that.
Yeah.
We're going to have to stop back by there and see what we can shake them down for.
Yeah. Well,
Absolutely.
and the thing you mentioned seems specifically, it's like anti-foot traffic of like,
Yeah.
you want to drive people away.
Yeah.
As a business owner, like I don't like this. So
We don't want any cars in Portland, but we want to penalize people for having a business that people can walk to.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I'll get back to the coffee thing, but I'm just curious. A little aside, have you heard about the little like one street they have now that's like no delivery trucks or anything can use? Have you heard about that?
I heard they were going to do something like that. So did they already do it?
I believe it's coming. Is that?
Block in front of City Hall where they can only use electric.
I'm just curious. Like, what do you think of that? Is it somebody ran a business? I don't know.
Of course, it's like a symbolic gesture. I mean, Portland leads the nation in symbolic gestures. I mean, honestly, like I guess what we're talking about is like climate-related legislation. I guess.
That'd fall into that. I think.
I mean, number one, I mean, I guess I haven't paid enough attention about it to speak well informed about it.
Officially or whatever. Yeah.
But I can guarantee you neither has the leadership in Portland. And so, I mean, like we have that in common.
Yeah.
And so, you know,
That's a good point. Yeah.
I mean, they may think they know more than I do, but I'm almost certain that they don't. So they shouldn't be making laws about the climate. I mean, I don't know who should, frankly.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, disinformation coming from a lot of different angles in 2023. So that's too much big brain stuff for me.
Yeah. No, that's a good point, though. I would wager like most business owners probably know about as much as they do about a lot of this stuff.
Probably a lot more. But that's more due to the fact that, I mean, politicians grandstand. They don't learn. They don't produce. They cry, and they glad hand. So, I mean, they're not into like producing things of value for the most part.
Yeah. Definitely not. Yeah.
No, I mean, look at Portland.
Yeah.
Portland
I
is-
don't know. I was just talking to somebody today about like some of the like community pools that the cities run, and
interesting.
I don't know. I remember the last time I was in news running all these stories about how they're slowly closing most of them because they don't have money to like maintain them. They're all old, but it just seems. I was talking to somebody who's like, they should put more money into that. I'm like, well, they're not a business. Like, they don't know how to.
No,
If they have a huge line of people that want that, they're not really going to look at that data, and they're just going to like, I don't know.
everything the government does loses money. And so the idea of looking at something from a cost-benefit relationship is foreign to them. You've touched on a subject that I could talk about for a long time because I used to be a very avid user of the Portland public pools.
Okay.
And then I switched to open water swimming. And so, I mean, I used to in the summertime, I used to frequent those, like my favorite Portland public schools pools, like once or twice a week.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they are gyms. I mean, like in a sense that like back then, which is, almost 10 years ago now, I was like, man, this is like one example of the government providing a good to normal people. Like most people in Portland obviously don't have a pool.
Yeah.
It's hot. It's a delightful, like family-centric, useful atmosphere,
And it's healthy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, if they're closing the pools, it wouldn't surprise me, but and that's like one of the last bastions of like, I feel like civic responsibility that they maintained.
Yeah.
Going to like a nice public pool is like something that, I mean, even in Texas growing up as a kid, like I mean, it's hot. And so going to the library and going to the pool was something that, my mom would do with me when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And the idea that that's slowly going away, or they just can't be bothered to maintain it, or they can't get lifeguards to work there, or
Yeah.
whatever the reason is.
It's kind of a, I think, combination of all of it. Yeah, probably.
For sure.
Cool. Well, anyway, let's get back to. So, was it sad having to close down? Were you just upset and like more? Was it more relief at that point to?
Well, it was a little sad, but it was way more relief because, I mean, that was probably like 2018. I can't remember now. Every like the years before COVID, like the 1 to 2 years before COVID, and now like every year since, they all blend together.
Totally, yeah.
And so
I feel like a lot of people, it's a big fog.
yeah, it's like the last week of school for like 4 years.
Yeah.
And so there was sadness because it was like the focal point of my life, but it had become such a burden, man. I mean, I lived in the neighborhood, and I walked to work several times, to and from work several times a day. And the amount of like needles and hobos and just filth that and this was like, 2015, 16, 17. This was, now a while ago.
It's not before like the full blown
Right.
stuff.
I got
you
out.
see. Yeah.
Thank God. I got out before the full blown Portland situation.
Was it like a daily thing as a business owner? You having to like clear out your door? And
Yeah.
kind of thing?
Yeah. Absolutely. There'd be like dudes taking shits on the side of the building because we were like the last unit in a large like renovated like 100-year-old building.
Okay.
Which was great. I loved the space. I loved the neighborhood. We'd have parties there like after hours and stuff. I'd have kegs there sometimes. But man, it was that. We would get broke into at least once a year.
Okay.
Every year.
Yeah.
Generally more than once a year. And like, it was laughable. It's like, the first time I was like, well, I'd like to file a police report. And I was like, okay, bro. Like we don't have time for that, man.
Yeah.
And so, I get a phone call in the middle of the night, and then, they would like leave a message. And then by the time I could even get to the shop, they'd already gone. And they would just throw up some plywood. I guess thank you for throwing up the plywood, so that everyone can't just walk in and out at will for the rest of the night. But, that was a problem. Stealing the register, just ripping it out of everything.
Oh, wow. That happened? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, man. That was the reason they were going there. I started keeping less and less money in the register overnight,
Just for that reason.
Yeah, it was a pain, but it just had to be done. And then like just the bullying. Like literally like a dude would walk in like a funny outfit and be like, "How do you measure your coffee beans?" And I'd be like, "Well, I use this scale right here." Like, that is not a like government approved scale, sir. Like we'll let you off now, but next time I come back here, you better have this type of scale.
I thought you were saying like a coffee nerd, but you're saying like a regulator is coming in.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah, man. Yeah.
That's got to make all things difficult. So did you have the farm plan at that point, or were you just kind of like, this is too much, I gotta?
I actually like leased a really small piece of land from a guy who worked for Intel up in like, what would you call that area? There's this area of Portland that I don't think most people know about. It's mountainous and secluded. It's like far northwest Portland.
Okay.
Like Logie Hill is like off the.
This is like the other side of St. John's Bridge, sort of.
Yeah.
Over there.
A little bit. Yeah, general vicinity. You could take, I believe you could take like Cornell.
Okay.
And then you could take a right at some point on maybe like West Union or something. But it's basically just a mountainous area to the northwest of Portland. And so we rented like an acre from this Intel guy. And he was a nerd. He got all freaked out. He's like, "Can you guys not use machinery?" And I was like, it's raw land, bro. Like, I don't know what else to tell you.
Use your hands.
Yeah, exactly, man. This is not Cambodia and the Khmer Rouge. And so, it went well, actually. Like, it was productive. I really enjoyed it. And I had no idea. I hesitate to even divulge this secret. I had no idea what happened on Highway 30. I had, it's like an industrial area. There's that strip club. And I had no idea what happened after that. And so,
what are you talking? Is it like prostitutes or something?
I don't know. What are you talking about, bro?
What you're talking about.
No, maybe.
What the fuck goes down here?
No, the 30 just goes. I don't want to divulge any secrets about like where some nice places that haven't been ruined are. So,
I see.
The 30 goes a long way.
Yeah.
It goes all the way to the coast.
Yeah.
And there are some places that a young man like me might enjoy living at that are off of Highway 30. And I had no idea. I'd never been that far. I'd never really been on the 30. And so I just like I really enjoyed it. And I mean, I'm not gonna say like I'm good at it, but I'm kind of good at it, you know, like I'm not bad at it. And so, yeah, that was a goal. And I mean, I lived in a condo in the Pearl, and I mean, like owning a condo in the Pearl is like an entirely another conversation that I could talk about. I mean, that was a roller coaster in and of itself. I mean, they all get assessments. And so overnight you owe them like $20 or $30 or $40,000.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, is that's HOA and all that stuff.
Exactly.
And
Exactly. And so they just dealt like a massive assessment to my building. I mean, my building, my unit was in perfect shape. I had no problems whatsoever. But overnight, I owed them like $20,000 because that was my share.
God, jeez.
And so I was trying to sell my condo, and I wanted to get out of the city, man. I mean, Portland had been such a beautiful place when I moved here. Like I always said, like there was nowhere else I wanted to live in North America aside from maybe Vancouver, BC, rather than Portland, Oregon. I loved the first several years of living there. And it just become like, I felt like everything was out to get me.
Yeah.
I mean, the government, fucking screaming hobos, the vibe was off.
Yeah.
The vibe was just off, man. It was time for a change.
And you had a little taste of that going up on that
Mm-hmm.
that acre.
And I loved it.
What was it originally that brought you out here from? Because you said Vancouver, BC.
Yeah.
Is
Well,
it just the rain and like the kind of city and stuff? Or?
yeah, I mean, coming from Texas, I had no idea that it could be like 75 degrees and sunny in July. Like I didn't know there was anywhere in the world that was an actual possibility. And so I went on a family vacation when I was like 15 up here, and it was like July. And we went from Portland to Vancouver, BC. I was like, wow. I met some like punk kids in Vancouver, BC, and we smoked cigarettes, and that was great. So I had a thoroughly good time. And like when it came time to pick a school, I chose University of Oregon because I wanted to get back here.
Okay, so you also went to college.
Yeah,
Okay.
I went to U of O for 4 years, graduated.
Okay.
I completely disavow University of Oregon now.
Okay.
I
That's all good.
have nothing to do with them.
I have no college degree, so I can't speak to anything.
You're probably smarter than all of us.
I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna timestamp this but I'm literally waiting for the Supreme Court thing it's gonna come down any moment now about the borrower forgiveness thing.
Oh,
And
yeah?
I'm really, as someone who didn't go to college, interested in the result of that because
What do you want to happen?
I think if you take any kind of loan, you should pay it back. I'll put it that way.
Okay. All right.
But I also do feel like the student loan system is very stacked in the federal government's favor. And I do think kids at a teenage level don't really know what they're signing up for, but
Yeah.
that's the system we have currently. But anyway, yeah, that's kind of my take on it. I just think they should refine the system a little bit. And I don't know. But anyway, so at that point, did you kind of formulate a plan after you closed the coffee shop to be like, I want to do this on a full farm, like
Oh yeah.
go all out?
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And maintain the coffee,
Well,
selling coffee, like
I basically I found I found a piece of land that I wanted to buy, and I tried to buy it for like months, but it was like a foreclosed property, and the government jacked me around. So
Yeah.
at one point they demanded a cashier's check for like $16,000 to maintain like the negotiations on the property.
just for that.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
Jeez.
And so here's the crazy part: is that I brought them a $16,000 cashier's check. Obviously, that's no like walk in the park, basically.
Yeah, that's a big chunk of change.
Exactly. So I brought it to them, and they said, "We can't accept this." And I said, "What? You required this?" And they said, "We don't have anywhere to keep it."
Okay.
And like I was like,
Like physically or
"Yeah, physically.
Okay.
We don't have anywhere to keep it." And so I gave up on owning that property. And then I found another property that I wanted to buy. And you know what? It's probably for the best because where I live now is secluded. It's like 7 acres of a tree farm, a Doug fir tree farm. So I have my own little forest. It's in a creek bed. And so there's a stream that runs through my property. It basically bisects my property. It was nothing but blackberry bramble. And so it took years to turn it into someplace where you could live.
just to clear that stuff out. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you clear blackberry bramble with machines, and then you burn it, it'll all look clear for like 6 months.
Okay.
And then it'll go back
comes right
just the way it was.
Wow.
Because they have deep, comprehensive, below ground root structures. And so you're not really getting tired of problems. So I got goats.
Okay. And that, I was thinking about what prompted the goat thing, but it was
That.
purely for that, to clear
That.
out. Yeah.
At first I was like, oh man, I don't have a barn, they're just going to, I don't have any fencing. They're just going to run around cougars are going to eat them. It's too much. And some of that's true, but I built a little barn for them. I fenced in as much as I could. And the first couple years, they did get out a lot because they're very smart.
Okay.
And that was a hassle. And then it really, for maybe 6 months, I just gave up. They were getting out every day. I was like, you know what? You guys are on your own. They have a really good sense of direction.
Yeah.
And so, man, I'd be leaving to go somewhere, and I would see the goats just running as a herd wild, like a pack of gazelles, going to the neighbors or whatever. And you know what? That worked for a while, but then the neighbors listen, they've destroyed my ornamental plants, man. You've got to do something about this. So I did. I mean, I fenced them in, and then they kept getting out a little bit. But I mean, knock on wood, they have not escaped their vast own area in 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good amount of time.
It
yeah.
is, man. It's the longest ever.
How many goats are we talking about here?
It varies depending on the time of year from, they'll kid and they'll have kids, or I'll sell a few, or I'll process a few. So it varies, but right now I have 13.
Okay. That's a good amount of goats, yeah.
It is, but I kind of bred my own breed of goat that's not as big as a full-size goat and not as small as a dwarf goat. And so they eat less, they produce more milk, they're quieter, they're more self-sufficient, they have good hooves. And so things have gotten a lot smoother over time.
Nice. And I'm guessing that was all part that you were not only is it going to clear all these blackberry bushes?
Yeah.
But it would also, you were planning the milk and the cheese and all. I'm guessing that was all part, or was that just extended?
That was
on?
a hope, but honestly, none of that stuff happens overnight. I mean, I'm kind of impatient by nature, and I thought, I'll get one doe in milk, and cool, I'll have milk all year, and I'll just go out and milk her, and I'll get a gallon of milk, like everybody says, and then life will be good. It doesn't really. I mean, first off, if you want to have goat milk, you need to get probably a dairy goat. There are goats from other breeds that can produce a lot of milk, but most of them won't.
Okay.
And so I got crosses at first, or I got what people would consider meat goats. I got them because they're just wild ass, self-sufficient goats. So I got some Kiko goats, which I love, but most people consider them meat goats, which basically means they put on a lot of muscle.
Yeah.
They don't develop really large udders naturally. They can, and some do, but that's not what they're known for. And so I got some dairy goats, and then I bred those two together, and so I kind of got a hybrid going on.
Interesting.
Now. Yeah.
See, I didn't even know there's make me sound really dumb about animals. I didn't even know there's different types for different uses like that.
Same with cattle.
Yeah.
There's dairy cattle and there's meat cattle. I mean, it really just comes down. Well, there's difference in temperament too, in a lot of cases. There's some difference in temperament, but it's primarily about muscle mass. Because if it's an animal for meat, then you're going to want it to build more muscle more quickly for market, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So dairy cows are a little skinnier.
Okay.
They're a little sassier too, although some meat goats can be pretty sassy. But dairy goats weren't just bred for milk production. Over time, they were bred for personality. I mean, a lot of dairy goats like being around humans, particularly if they were raised if they're bottle kids, or even if they've just been around, good humans. They like being around humans. They want to hang out.
I was gonna ask, how they, because I've only faid them at zoos and stuff, but
Well, they always like it then.
yeah, but they seem very personable to humans, and I was just curious, but yeah. That's
Oh
kind of
man,
what you're saying? Yeah.
tons of personality.
Yeah.
There'll be a queen or a leader of the herd, and so my queen is an Alpine goat, which are I think generally speaking, most people who know about goats would consider them to be the most intelligent goats of all the goats.
Okay.
So like this goat can open doors. She can go wherever she wants to go because she can find a way to get there. I mean, one time it was in the summertime and it was just one of those freak things that rarely happens here where like it rained all day in the middle of the summer, like poured rain. And so I'm sleeping in my house and at like 3:00 in the morning, I hear the front door creak open. And it's like, man, you know, I live out in the country. If someone's coming over, I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
Like
A bit huge red flag going on.
Exactly. The door creaking open, the sound of the door creaking, front door creaking open at 3:00 in the morning, you know, that gets your noggin jogging. And so I got up, grabbed a gun, and lo and behold, it's a goat. The goat had opened the door and walked in my house. The goat had to have gone around the entire area that they live in, which is like 2 acres of wooded creek bed, found a way out in the dark, gone along the tree farm, and then popped in the front porch and opened up the door.
So they must have crazy like memory too, right? Because
They do.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
They remember how you treated them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they totally do. I mean, in terms of animals, like, I would say like my smartest goat is probably as smart as like a 2 or 3-year-old child.
Wow.
Yeah.
But what about compared to a dog? I'm just curious.
I think they're probably smarter than most dogs, but they're, I mean, you know, like Lassie, Old Yeller, you know,
Some of the classics.
yeah, Hooch from Turner and Hooch. They're probably smarter.
Wow.
Some border collies are probably smarter too, but I mean, you just your rank and file like a pug, way smarter.
Yeah.
Way smarter.
That's that. So tell me about when you kind of started to, because it sounded like you started like I can sustain myself from like the milk and all this stuff, and then at some point you started to want to sell the.
Yeah, I have so much.
Yeah.
It's like it's kind of like with goats, you either have no milk or you have like a ton of milk.
Okay.
Because there are a lot of factors that go into it, but I mean their diet, the time of year, what you are or not feeding them, how old they are, how many kids they've had in the past. And so I went from like getting like, you know, maybe like a pint a day, which I thought was so awesome. Mm-hmm. You know, it was enough for like my milk and maybe like a cup after dinner to getting like almost 2 gallons a day.
Wow.
It's like, dude, I can't even store all of this. And so now I make like ice cream, cheese, yogurt.
I bet that ice cream is damn good.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
And I'm going to say right now, I tried his milk at this get-together thing, and I'm a huge cow milk fan, like whole milk, and I was blown away. I was like, this is the best milk I've ever had in my
Nice.
life. And, so I'm a converted like goat milk fan.
Cool, man. Well, you guys let me know. I'll make it rain on you.
Okay. Can you? I was just gonna ask about comparing it to cow's milk, because I think you were saying before it's way better, and I don't know.
Well, I've got some friends that have a dairy cow. So, I mean, before I had goat milk, I would get milk from them, and sometimes I milk their cow. But in terms of nutrition, like, don't quote me on this because I might get some of it mixed up. But by and large, I think goat milk has more protein and less fat. So depending on what you're looking for from your milk, that's a good or a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, and then it depends on the breed. So like, some goats have more like milk fat and some have higher sugar content.
Okay.
And so since most of mine now at this point are kind of crosses. So like, 2 of the breeds are basically like wild goats that were like re-domesticated in the past 100 years. And so they don't produce much milk in a like quantity amount, but the milk tastes wild. Like it's like buttermilk ranch on its own. It's got a lot of fat.
Wow.
It's really like herbaceous. And so I crossed those goats with more traditional dairy goats. And so, I mean, my goat milk that I have now, it has a little bit higher fat content than most goat milk you're going to get from those wilder breeds. And then Alpines are known for having more sugar in their milk. So I've got a couple Alpines. and so they add a little bit more sugar to the milk itself. So it's got a little bit less fat still than like cow milk, but it's probably a little bit sweeter, and it's probably got more protein.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't think, or I don't know. I don't know anything about the nutrition facts. I'm like, more protein sounds good to me. But
I think the big thing is like the fact that it's raw, like the natural. If you think about it, like the mama goat gives the baby goat everything. The best thing it can do, and the most efficient way for it to make sure it stays healthy, is to give it like a continuous supply of something that not only has like protein and carbohydrates, and fat and sugar in it, but that it also has like a microbial population that helps the little goat stay healthy. And so if you're a human and you consume that like every day, I mean, I like pickles.
yeah.
I really like pickles, all types of pickles. Like I have no interest in eating pickles ever now. And it's a shame because I pickle stuff. I'm like, I don't want that. It tastes good, but like I get all of like, you know, like the good flora and fauna that my guts need from like goat stuff, you know? I'm a healthy little goat.
That makes sense. Yeah. I was just thinking, was this like the first foray into like animals you had or like?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, my family had a ranch in Oklahoma when I was growing up, and they had like 500 head of cattle, but no one was milking anyone.
Okay.
They were like, I mean, they were meat cattle, I guess you could say, but I mean, it was really more of like, it was my grandpa's ranch, and he just loved having cattle and loved being out in the country. And so, I mean, they would sell a few, but it was really more of just like the lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I've been around animals as a young kid for the first, let's say, like 12 years of my life, but I kind of grew to dislike it. Because, you know, like I became like a teen and like I wanted to hang out with my friends. And I didn't want to go like 2 hours into the middle of nowhere that had like 2 television stations and just hang out with like, you know, my parents and my grandparents. So I began to dislike it. But as an adult, man, I guess maybe at some point you get enough of the city too. I mean, it's kind of like the opposite happens, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you is like, what did you start to notice like in your own life of just how that transition? Like, did you start to immediately feel more satisfied and just more like wholesome? And I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I get, whenever I get out of the city, I start to feel that within like a couple hours of just like, oh man, it's,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think, you know, there's a lot of problems in rural America, but one thing about, and this is not even everyone in rural America, but there are people in rural America that are trying to be as self-sufficient as possible. And so when you deal with those people in the country, like, it's way harder to blame anyone for something you don't have that you need or something that needs to be done because it's on you.
Yeah.
Like, there's no finger pointing to someone else. It's not someone else's fault for your own conditions. Whereas if you live in like an 800 square foot apartment in the middle of a big city, it's really easy to be like, my life sucks because these people are doing this. And that might be partially true. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's certainly truth to that. But like, I think the difference is, you know, like agency, you know, there's just there's no reason to complain about things in the country because no one's going to do them for you.
Yeah.
Either you did them or you didn't, you know? And so like living your life entirely that way, I think it just makes you less anxious. There's no mystery. Like, is this nebulous force going to help me or hurt me? Maybe. But at the end of the day, you're going to be responsible for, you know, what you produce.
That's so interesting. Yeah. It's going to make me sound kind of dumb, but I've never thought about it that way of like, I don't know, like there's no one to blame, you know, like, but yourself in that situation. And yeah, I don't know. That's very kind of refreshing. I think agency is probably the best, like that's probably the best word for it. But yeah,
I mean, you know, obviously rural America isn't a utopia. I mean, there are plenty of people living off government benefits and spending all of those benefits at Walmart, but that's a choice.
Yeah.
They may not realize it, but that's a choice. And so, you know, there certainly is that population in all of rural America, but there are also a handful of folks that are trying to just do it themselves,
Yeah.
building their own stuff, maintaining their own stuff, raising animals, growing vegetables. I mean, it's like one of those things where when you start doing it, it's hard to imagine how you didn't do it for so long.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, that was the feeling that I had.
Yeah. It's just, yeah. I like the way that you put that because it's so much about like personal responsibility and also like victimizing yourself, I think. Because like you said, there probably are instances where if you live in an urban area where there are things out of your control that kind of are other people, groups' fault or agencies' fault or whatever. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense of like when you remove all that, it's just like it's your own responsibility and you're only a victim of like your own actions for the most part. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's cool. What would you tell people, like young people or any people of any age, I guess, that want to get into that type of lifestyle? Like, what are obviously we've heard a lot of the positive. What are some of the negative things? And because I know a lot of people my age, millennials, who are like, I want to do it, and they read these like CNBC articles, and they want to fucking just buy like a USDA property or something.
Yeah.
You know?
I would say, folks, get used to being covered in shit.
Okay.
That's
I can
gonna
believe that.
Yeah, that's gonna be my first.
Rule number one.
Yeah, rule number one. When people come to my house, I only have one rule, and that's that you have to take off your shoes when you come in my house because I tell them there's shit everywhere. And I'm like, in a sense, that's not true. In a sense, it is true because I have ducks and geese, and they can go wherever they want. And man, I don't know if you've been around ducks and geese, but they have like the wettest, vilest shits you can imagine.
Is it like, you know what really bugs me? I used to have a muscle car, and it would get shit on by seagulls, and I always thought they had bad shit. But are ducks?
Have you heard a seagull shit?
I haven't heard it.
Okay.
No. Does it make it sound?
The sound is bad. Like a duck or a goose, like it sounds like a human taking a wet shit next to you. It smells worse in many cases, but it's definitely extremely audible.
Wow.
And it's always wet.
Now I'm gonna have to like check it out. I gotta like
man.
pull it up on YouTube or like listen next time.
They're really sexually aggressive.
Okay.
Their penises are hideous.
Wow.
They're like corkscrew. Yeah, man. They're terrible. They're terrible.
I've never heard any of this. Is
Yeah.
I'm learning something.
I mean, like, goats having sex is pretty pedestrian. I mean, it's comical at times, but ducks and geese having sex is
it's like violent.
it's displeasing. Yeah. you want to turn your head. You're like, I didn't want to see that today.
So that's the first rule.
Yeah.
Do you think I was asking you this when we met the first time? But do you think there's a lot of those millennials who kind of get in over their head, trying to do this?
I did too. I mean, I think so I was going to say this, and I kind of forgot about it, but. One of the things about living in the country and raising your own food and raising animals and being responsible for, building your own house, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is that like there's a lot of drama that goes on. Like there are like bitter failures that you'll have to look at every single day. And so for a lot of people, if those bitter failures mount up, then they're at some point they're going to toss up their hands and say, I give up, man. Just get me out of here. You know, like I can't do this. It's too hot. It's too dirty. It's too much work. I'm too cut up. I mean, you can hurt yourself really easily when you're using knives and sharp metal things on a daily basis. I mean, it requires a lot of mindfulness. You just got to be aware that you're using something that can hurt yourself or hurt others or hurt animals, et cetera, et cetera. So, like, I think people who work in offices, and I was one of these people. I mean, you know, they tend to look down on farmers. Mm-hmm. Like, it's hard to imagine now, but I guess trying to channel the way I thought about things, like, well, you're not going to make any money. You're going to be out in the heat. You're going to be out in the cold. You're going to have to shovel shit. Why would you do that when you can just sit in an office and, like, look at spreadsheets and call people and make a living? And it's like the reason is because that stuff becomes mind-numbingly boring after, for me, a few years. But I can only imagine someone doing that for like a career. Like, I forget who said it, but there was like even in the 1900s, there was some guy who was talking about, because industrialization was such a big deal in the Western world. And this guy said, yeah, industrialization is great in a lot of ways. But the problem is there aren't that many people who want to hammer a nail every day of their lives for the next 20 years. And so owning land and raising animals is the complete opposite of that. I've had to learn so many skills that I don't have an aptitude for. It doesn't matter. I mean, I have to learn it. I can't pay for someone to come out and do it, man. I mean, it's just, it's got to be done.
Yeah.
I've got to do it. I fix cars. I build houses. I fix plumbing. I do some electrical work. I mean, I had the softest hands you could imagine for a long time. And now, it's just got to be done.
Yeah. It's funny that you said that, because I was just going to ask, like, or just say, I feel like a lot of people who do get in over the head with that, they probably get out there and like they just want to call somebody for anything that needs to be done, and they're like, there's nobody really that's gonna do this. Like,
I'm
or you could, and you're just gonna lose all your money and
I mean, I pissed away so much money when I first got out there calling people to do stuff. Like, oh, the land's got to be cleared. Well, I haven't ever operated a tractor, so I better pay someone a few $1,000s to do that. Like, that adds up, man, because there's stuff that you anticipate and there's stuff that you don't. Yeah. And so if you spend a lot of your money on stuff that you anticipate, you're not going to have any money for the stuff you don't. And sometimes that's even more important. So,
yeah,
you just got to do it. That's probably a big thing, particularly if you're going out there as like a couple. Like, again, it's like, it's the same principle. Like, if you go out there as a couple, I think a lot of people would tend to blame one person or the other and be like, you got me out here and now, it's like 95 degrees today and there's all this stuff that needs to be done and it's hot and it's dirty and I don't want to do it and I wish I never came out. I mean, I think, if you don't have a strong relationship with someone and you move out to the country, there's probably movies about this too. I mean, where like, things go wrong, and the tendency for a lot of people, maybe most people, is to blame someone else.
They kind of turn it inward against each other. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I never thought about that dynamic too. I think a lot of people, maybe especially if they're in a relationship, just have this thing of like, oh, we'll just go out there and like, I don't know, we'll just buy the farm and then we'll figure it out.
Just wing it.
It's like,
it's gonna be beautiful.
I don't think it's gonna work, but I don't know. I just think the way you've done it's really cool, and I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, there was like a show called The Simple Life.
I remember that.
Paris Hilton and
reality show.
Yeah, Nicole Richie, and so like they would go around to the country in America, and they would have to like live with like a farm family, and so, I mean, I think actually that's probably a pretty good example of, like, there are things that are beautiful about living in the country, but you can't experience the things that are beautiful about living in the country unless you take care of the things that are necessary about living in the country. So if you're not the person that's going to do that, then you're going to have a real rough time.
Yeah. And you were telling me some of that last time, and it's just, that's the stuff I think people need to hear, is like, you're going to have to like put animals down and
absolutely
like, be a hardcore like veterinarian of your own. And sometimes,
absolutely.
And I don't think people think about that. So they just want, oh, they're all cute animals and like, it'll be great. And
yeah. A great example is raccoons. I tend to like raccoons. They're clever, they're resilient, they're hardy, they tend to have some personality. Dude, a raccoon on my place is kill on sight because not only will they kill my geese and my ducks, they'll kill for fun. Like, even if they're not hungry, it's
they're not
just
gonna
like,
eat it or yeah,
it's like, a lot of predators are like that actually. They'll just kill out of habit. And this happened this year for the first time, because I had some goats that kidded in the wintertime. The raccoons would come in the middle of the night and they would kidnap the kids. So I lost like 5 newborn goats to raccoons.
Jeez.
And so, they're kill on sight, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I think some of those realities like people don't think about, but yeah. So tell people like where you want to plug, like where you can buy your stuff and what you sell and everything. You don't have to. But.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So you can find Local Roasting Co. coffee in all the new seasons. Well, most of the new seasons in the Portland area. In terms of the farm products, Like that's more of like a word of mouth situation. So
Gotcha.
you know, if people are interested in that, feel free to reach out to me, and we can work something out. But so I got like refresh raw organic goat milk, sometimes goat milk ice cream, always goat cheese, a couple different types. So
That all sounds delicious. Yeah.
yeah,
And I'm sure there's plenty of coffee drinkers too who'll buy some of that coffee.
cool.
Yeah, I'll have to get some. Is it you do ground and bean or just
Well,
whole bean?
It's all whole bean, but at all the new seasons they have a grinder in
Oh,
the coffee
of course.
spot.
Yeah. What am I thinking?
Yeah. People ask. No, that's a good question. People ask that all the time.
I'm one of those guys. I always buy ground coffee, and like I know a lot of coffee people are like, "What the hell are you doing? Like you're an idiot." But,
Well, you know, I'm not gonna. You know, I'm not a coffee person like that.
okay,
But you know,
okay. Not a snob.
yeah, man. You should grind it just before you use it.
Yeah, that's the ideal.
That's the move.
Okay, man. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Actually, I'm going to ask you. I'm starting to do. I used to do. What's your favorite thing in the Northwest? But I have two questions now. So, do you have like a place or like a person or like a landmark or something that's just awesome up here? Maybe it's your own farm. I don't know.
Oh man. All right.
Restaurant maybe or something.
I'm actually going. This is one of those things where I hesitate because I don't want it to be like discovered, but I think it's far enough away that people will leave it alone. I really like Vernonia, Oregon.
Okay, I've been there a couple times. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like literally stuck in like 1955 or 1960. Yeah. It's super wholesome. They have like a lumberjack festival once a year, and everybody that's from there comes back there, and so they do all like the logging competitions and stuff like that. It's like surrounded by kind of like mid-size, somewhere between hills and mountains, and so you just feel like you've like dropped into the Shire, man.
Yeah.
So Vernonia, and there's like a lake right there. It's pretty good fishing. So Vernonia.
Cool. Yeah. And I want to say, what was the movie? They shot some movies out. Was that Twilight or something? Or
I
some
wouldn't be
movie.
surprised, man. Like it is ripe for like storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the new one, this is the first time I ever asked this, but what's the dumbest thing or like your least favorite thing about the Northwest? I mean, could be a long list.
Coming from Texas, like, Texas could arguably be the friendliest state
Okay.
in the United States. Like the Pacific Northwest, man, I guess it's probably because a lot of people came here to like get away. You know, they always tell that story about like at the Oregon border, there was like, you know, California this direction and it was reversed or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
I feel like people in Portland, and probably, I mean, no, people in Portland in particular, like they all think they're in a Wes Anderson movie. Like, but they're not. You know, they're just like, kind of like cold and quiet and like affected. And it doesn't need to be that way.
Yeah.
You know, like you can tell jokes, you can laugh loudly if you want. Actually, it makes life better if you're willing to do those types of things.
Totally.
So it's been that way. I noticed that when I moved here a long time ago. So I can't say it's gotten better or worse, but just like that level of like, they all think they're like, you know, Steve Zissou or like, you know, they're in Rushmore or whatever. And it's just like, dude, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Everyone's doing that.
Yeah.
You know, like it's not, I don't even think those movies are that funny anyway, to be honest, but.
I know what you mean though. Yeah. It could be, it doesn't even have to be Wes Anderson, but I think people up here more than other regions kind of feel like they're in a movie and they're the star and like
They all think
and it's
they're
like,
artists.
dude, you're a server at a restaurant.
Absolutely, man.
You know?
Oh man, I don't go out to eat at all anymore, but when I do, I love to give the servers a real good time.
Cool, man. Well, yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Otherwise, we can.
No, I think I'm good, man.
All right. Thanks so much for coming on, man.
No
Appreciate it.